So if you ever watch my videos and my hair's kind of together still, that typically means it's morning. Like right now it's like 7 a.m. I just finished my morning workout. And if you ever watch my hair when it's all messy, it's probably close to 8:30 to 9 o'clock at night. And that means I just finished night training. I don't know why I felt like sharing that, but if you watch the videos, you'll typically see that my hair's kind of together or my hair's all over the place. Anyway, today's question is from Ricky, and he says that he's wondering if he's getting ahead of himself. So he says that he recently started doing jiu-jitsu a little while ago, and he said that before jiu-jitsu he did capoeira. And he said in capoeira, he said the coaches told him not to get ahead of himself and said, like, don't just flip around and try stuff. Focus on what we show you. He says that's kind of in contrast to what a lot of his jiu-jitsu coaches say, because his jiu-jitsu coaches are like, man, you should be trying everything and just get online and watch YouTube, go buy DVD instructionals, expose yourself to as much information. And so he feels conflicted. Should he stay only to what the coaches are showing him in the gym, or should he just do that but also augment his training with other outside resources? So, Ricky, first off, thanks for the question. And let me say before I get into anything else, I don't think that you're getting ahead of yourself. I think you're trying to expose yourself to as much information as possible, which I agree with your coach is a great idea. I think that the only time you kind of get ahead of yourself is when you come into the gym expecting a particular result to happen, right? So for instance, let's say that you've been rolling and you submitted Bob yesterday. Well, now that you submitted Bob yesterday, you expect to always submit Bob. That's getting ahead of yourself, because that's not always going to happen. You and Bob are going to grow, right? And so I see so much frustration from people who come into the gym expecting a submission when, again, we're all going to grow together, so you can't just expect that submission. Another example is when promotions come up. A lot of people, like, they train really hard and they think that they're going to get submitted, right? Or not get submitted, but get promoted, and they go to the promotion and then they don't get promoted. They got ahead of themselves. They were expecting a certain outcome, and then that's when you get ahead of yourself. As far as you exposing yourself to as much information as possible, I think it's smart. I think you're being a diligent student. Now, as far as, like, again, this situation, I had a similar conversation with one of my students last night. He's a white belt, sort of about halfway through the white belt phase, moving to blue belt, and we were talking about leg locks. We've been practicing leg locks a lot in the gym recently, and he said to me, you know, should I play around with these leg locks in training? He's like, because I'm a white belt, and even at blue belt, I mean, you can't really use that many of them in competitions, so am I just wasting my time? And so my answer to him is going to be similar to what I would give to you, because he's like, am I getting ahead of myself? And so what I told him was, first off, like, you got to think about, like, not everything that you do is always going to have this direct, like, impact right now, right? Because you always got to be thinking about sort of the long game, right? Because when I train people, I'm not training people to be good white belts or good blue belts. I'm training them to be good black belts someday, right? So I'm going to expose them to as much information as possible. Now, I try to do it in a systematic process. We have beginner classes to make sure the bases are covered with basics. But again, overall, I'm going to try to show you as much stuff as possible, because I've learned that from a coach. I feel like, as a coach, I'm taking like a bucket of tennis balls, and there's like a big Velcro target, and I'm just chucking these balls at them, right? At these Velcro targets. And some of the balls stick, some of the balls don't, right? And just like that, as a coach, I teach techniques. I teach everything from my best A game to stuff I don't even use, but I show it to them because I want them to be able to grab what works for them, because not everybody's going to have, you know, we all have different anatomies, we have different body mechanics, we have different levels of athleticism, so different techniques are going to work differently or at all for certain people. And so I know that some of my students will gravitate towards my A game, some of my students will not, and so I need to show them other stuff. And so with this, you always have to think that, you know, with this, your coach is showing stuff, but there's not to say that there's not good stuff out there that can expose you to other possibilities. And the importance of that is that exposure to other possibilities can lead you in directions you didn't expect. One example from my own training as a white belt, because we'll go to do a white belt story for you, is when I was a white belt. At first, I didn't want to play guard. I thought guard was stupid. I was a wrestler, and I sort of had this sort of, you know, aversion to it. I didn't want to do guard. Guard was being on my back, and in wrestling, that was bad. And I still sort of associate it with bad. And then I went to this seminar that Pablo Popovich did in our city, and I went to the seminar, and he was doing butterfly guard. And I watched it, and obviously I couldn't play a full guard game with a scissor sweep, so I'm not ready for butterfly guard, but just seeing the possibilities of it, I was like, oh man, this is so cool. Guard can be this aggressive position where you're sweeping and getting on top of the person and then putting your smash game on. So it got me excited to learn guard. And when I came back to the gym like the next week, obviously I couldn't use butterfly guard, but I tried to play guard, and I actually got excited about it. And just because I could see what's possible, right? Just because I saw the possibility, it led me down a different path. Now, I did not use that butterfly guard position for another year and a half, but the fact that I was exposed to it made me grow in another position. So the same thing can be true for your own game, right? Like just exposing yourself to as much information as possible can lead you in different directions in your game that you're not really, you don't expect. It kind of reminds me, and I know this is a little random, but I think you'll get the analogy. It reminds me of space travel, right? If you've ever looked up, like, just go do a Google search if you're curious, like discoveries, inventions because of space travel. It's crazy, like how many things, because again, you think space travel, that's kind of a getting ahead of yourself thing, right? We're shooting this big hunk of metal and people up in the sky, right? But if you look at all the stuff that's come as a result of us just trying to do these crazy things, like everything from the everything from the digital imaging that gets used for like MRI machines to things like cordless drills. It's like crazy, like how many inventions were spawned from just us going up into space. And so you think about that, that was not a direct result. No one said, hey, we need to like create this digital imaging thing for people's tendons and stuff. No, that just came as a byproduct. And sometimes that'll happen with your own game is you will go up, you'll try new stuff, it's not gonna work, and then you'll end up getting these like other positions, these other moves as a byproduct of you just sort of growing in different directions. So with that said, Ricky, experiment, play around with lots of stuff, expose yourself to as much information. If you still feel like you're having overload because it's just too much, then when you go online to look for the auxiliary stuff, because obviously the stuff that your coach is showing should be the biggest bulk of your training, or should be the stuff that has the most weight. When you go online, focus on what they're working on. So if your coach is showing you side control escapes, when we go online and we start to peck around on YouTube, search for side control escapes to sort of help augment the training that you're already focused on. Instead of saying, okay, coach is working on side control escapes, I'm gonna go to half guard sweeps, right? Doesn't work as well if it's because you're kind of overloaded with information. So with that said, thanks for the question, brother. I hope that helps. I'll talk to you guys next time.